The new iPad Pros have just come out and they're powered by the Apple M1 chip. Today we're going to test heaps of games under this chip and see how they go. For reference, on screen you can see the specs of my iPad Pro. Please note, all games have been captured with an external capture card and have been analysed with a raw video analysis program called TR-Drop. Our first game is Divinity Original Sin 2, which came to iPad last week. Probably the only game you can get right now which is actually fully optimized for Apple M1 on iPad Pro, and as you can see it pretty much always gets 60 FPS. It will drop during combat and during scenes where there are lots of explosions. I didn't capture the frame rate for all of these recordings just because it takes up a lot of storage. It's like 5 gigabytes per minute or something, it's ridiculous. This game is also full of tech. It has full controller support, next-gen controller support, rumble support, the lights and PlayStation controllers will work. It also has mouse and keyboard support, and it is running at ultra graphics quality on the iPad Pro with M1. You can't change the graphics quality, it's just set on that by default. But the game looks absolutely gorgeous and pretty much plays at its best capabilities here. It's fantastic. If you have the iPad Pro with M1, you basically really should get this game because it's kind of the only one that's taking full advantage of everything on offer. Our next game is Grid Autosport. I really love this game still. It's beautiful, it looks fantastic, and it also supports HD graphics on iPad or iPhone. Right now we're running it at the optimization mode called Graphics, which is kind of stuck at 40 FPS. The frame rate isn't great there, so I put it onto performance optimization and it gets 60 FPS pretty much locked. The only time that it does struggle sometimes, well not really struggle, but when it will drop frame rate if you have a massive head-on collision, it will drop like 2 FPS under performance mode. We also have Performance Plus mode, which lets you play at 120 FPS, but under this mode the graphics quality will be reduced. I can't measure 120 FPS games right now because my capture card only supports up to 60 FPS, so that may be something that I look at in the future, but yeah, under this mode the game does get 120 FPS. This is a great racing game and I highly suggest it. It's pretty much the best racing game on the App Store. Okay, here we have Sky Children of Light, which is kind of like, I don't know, is this the most popular App Store game? Anyways, it runs really well. For the most part it's 60 FPS, sometimes it does drop as you can see just before, but this is at high performance mode which allows you to play at 60 FPS. Here we are in high def mode. Now high def mode will cap the FPS to 30 and it will enable high definition resolution. And it looks absolutely gorgeous on my 11-inch screen, and I cannot imagine how good it would look on the 12.9-inch. Alrighty, here we have my favorite strategy game, XCOM 2 by Feral Interactive. They also brought Grid Autosport. I'm really sorry I couldn't measure the frame rate of this game, it just wouldn't work. What I do know is that on high-end devices the game will get over 30 FPS or a high frame rate. Feral Interactive did tell me that. Now this game is also interesting because it has partial keyboard support, it's not full keyboard support. The game also doesn't have mouse support, but I just use Apple's on-screen cursor with my trackpad and it works really well. I hope that Feral Interactive consider upgrading the graphics quality and even making the frame rate a bit higher so that it's on par with PC and console, just because for my liking it's too low and it's quite noticeable, especially on these iPad Pros as they have a reasonably large display. You wouldn't really notice it much on an iPhone, for example. Alrighty, a lot of you are going to want to be seeing this one. It's Call of Duty Mobile. I'm running it at very high graphics quality and the frame rate is also on its max preset and it gets 60 FPS for the most part. It does drop sometimes when you are shooting at enemies and stuff and whatnot, Look, it's not the most demanding game out there, and if I was to be honest, it is kind of on par graphically with the PS3 and Xbox 360 version, so this performance isn't going to blow anyone away. I hope Activision update this game because it could look so much better, and I also hope they update the controller support because it's terrible, man. There's no menu interaction controller support, and besides that, it just doesn't feel very good. It feels weird to play this game with a controller. It does not feel anything like the console version, and I don't actually know how to explain it. It doesn't feel very responsive. I'd be interested to know if you guys feel the same. So Pascal's Wager was actually the first game on iPad to support mouse and keyboard, which was fantastic to see. I don't know why hardly any games support this yet. This iPad Pro version also supports up to 120 FPS. However, I am unable to capture 120 FPS because, as I said, my capture card doesn't support it. Keeping in mind though, to achieve 120 FPS, you are going to have to lower the graphics quality. For example, I am playing at the highest graphics quality here, which is known as iPad Pro. And as you saw just before, it doesn't always stick to 60 FPS. It will drop sometimes into the low 40s. The game is inspired by Dark Souls, so if you like that game, you should have fun here, but it's important to note it definitely doesn't have the polish of that game. The controls are quite clunky, even with a controller and mouse and keyboard, and it definitely needs some work there. But the world here is really, really fantastic. The creatures that you fight are kind of creepy, and they're really challenging, like this monster here. This one always gets me. It just comes out of nowhere and it's really annoying, but it's fun, it's challenging. So if you want to give it a go, that's up to you. So many of you guys asked me to test Genshin Impact, so here it is for you. I'm playing it at the highest graphics quality possible, and as you can see, it does fairly well. The frame rate does drop quite considerably when you are in combat and when there are explosions, so if you want a consistent 60 FPS, I would suggest playing at medium graphics quality, and you could even lower the frame rate to 30, then your iPad won't get as bad thermal throttling. The interesting thing here is that if you didn't know, Genshin Impact now has controller support. However, you have to enable it from the settings menu. It actually works really, really well. Okay, here is the Pathless. The Pathless is... it wasn't very well optimized for previous iPad Pros, and it had a lot of stuttering, even on the A12Z chip. And to be honest, here it isn't doing as much better. The game is also locked to 30 FPS, it will not go over it, and the graphics quality is, it's stuck, you can't change it, and it looks to be running at about medium graphics quality. I'm really hoping that Giant Squid update this game so that it can support 60 FPS and a higher graphics quality, because the Apple M1 version on Mac can get around 60 FPS and can play at the high quality, so it should be possible here as it's running very similar hardware. Oh, I almost forgot, this game is one of the only ones out there that supports Rumble, like Divinity Original Sin 2 with controller support, and it's probably one of the best in terms of Rumble support, as you feel it when you are shooting your arrow, when there are explosions and so forth. So definitely check it out if you're interested in Rumble. Rush Rally 3 also supports Rumble with controllers too, and it also plays really well here. Graphically, it's not that amazing, it's kind of on par with, I don't know, maybe a late PlayStation 2 game, but it's kind of difficult to judge where graphics stand up these days, as people have very mixed opinions on that topic. So the frame rate here is mostly 60 FPS, but sometimes it does drop down into the low 50s. But then again, I am running it at the max quality. You can actually play up to 120 FPS if you lower the graphics quality to about medium. This is probably one of the best racing games on the App Store too. It's really on par with Grid Autosport, not graphically, but gameplay wise, and it even has a damage system when you run into cars that's pretty good. A lot of people do overlook this one because of the graphics, and please, please don't. It's so much fun. It even has multiplayer now. Feral Interactive are known to bring great strategy games to the App Store, and Company of Heroes is one of those. It's probably the best RTS out there still to this day, even if it is really, really old. Unfortunately, as you can see, I was unable to track the frame rate with my program here. Some games just don't work. What I do know is that this version is pretty much playing near 60 FPS on high-end devices, so you should presume that it will be the same here too. This game was also just updated with the Opposing Fronts DLC, which is fantastic. So many people were asking for that game, and it's really good to see that Feral Interactive listened. They also updated it with full mouse and keyboard support, and as you can see, compared to Pascal's Wager, it has its own in-game mouse, similar to Divinity Original Sin 2. So yeah, this is probably one of the best places to play this game. Company of Heroes is no longer on Mac because it was a 32-bit game, so if you missed this game, give it a go on iPad. Back when Asphalt 9 came out, it was locked to 30 FPS, which was really unfortunate as this game really should be played at 60 FPS, just because it's so hectic and there are so many on-screen effects going on at once. It really benefits from this high frame rate. It's not playing at 120 FPS, it's 60. To play at 60 FPS, you do have to enable it from settings though, that is important to note. Is it a locked 60 FPS? Look, in some levels, yes it is, like this one. However, in some levels, as you will soon find out, the frame rate does drop. So yeah, as you can see there, on this scene when I'm going down this hill, the frame rate does drop there. I don't know why. Asphalt 9 also has full controller support, and it's really fun to play with it compared to the touchscreen controls. So if you have a controller, definitely use it for that. Just be wary. This is Gameloft we're talking about, and this game does have some mixed ways of monetization, so be wary of that. It's not terrible, but it's there, it's free, and it has its issues. Okay, here we are in PUBG Mobile. Now, it's important to note, I'm not very good at this game, so don't expect any pro gameplay. I did get some kills, but I'm still not very good and I don't really know what I'm doing. Anyway, I'm playing at Ultra HD graphics quality, and as you can see, the frame rate pretty much is about 40 FPS. If you want 60 FPS, you'll have to lower the settings to about high. Now, apparently this game does support 120 FPS, but I couldn't find any confirmation of that. I believe it may be locked to some places around the world that can get this frame rate, but I don't know, because it's not currently supported for me. To be honest, I'm pretty disappointed with this performance. This game isn't that amazing graphically. It's really overhyped in that regard. It's playable, yes, but if you want 60 FPS, as I said, you'll have to lower the settings. NBA 2K21 is a mixed bag? I don't know if you want to call it that, but for the most part, it's locked at 60 FPS, and it's really smooth and nice. On iPad Pro, you can easily play at ultra high graphics quality, and the frame rate will stick to 60, but as you'll see soon, it will drop, and we'll get into that. Ultra high is really good for a number of reasons, mainly because the t-shirts look absolutely good, and you can see all of the text and font and everything is just sharp and crisp. Because if you play this game at medium quality, it doesn't look that good when you go close up to player models and whatnot. So here we go right here. The interesting thing is that when this game switches to the camera angle, if that's what you want to call it, it will switch to 30 FPS. I don't know why the developer decided to do this, because it's really jarring to your eyes that it just randomly switches frame rate so quickly. I really hope they update this game so that it's just 60 FPS all the time, because I don't know why they would do that. Dead Cells is one of the best action platformers on the App Store. It has amazing gameplay. It also has weird performance right now. It will get only 60 FPS if high resolution is disabled from settings. If it's enabled, the frame rate will drop into the low 50s. Still, I would have high resolution enabled as it looks much crisper. You may not notice the difference in this YouTube video though, but it's there, so take my word for it. What I'm noticing right now is that Minecraft isn't doing as nicely as I thought it would. Playing at default settings, the performance is kind of mixed. To get 60 FPS right now, you'll unfortunately have to turn off fancy graphics and make sure render distance is set to low. GTA San Andreas is just, it's such a good game. I still play this all the time on my Apple devices, and I even sometimes play it on my PlayStation 2. The annoying thing here is that the game is capped at 30 FPS, it always has been, and I really hope that Rockstar update the game to support 60 FPS, maybe even 120 FPS. For Journey, you can play up to 120 FPS, but you'll only receive that kind of performance with a lower RT resolution, found under Journey settings from the Settings app on your home screen, not in-game. If you play at the very high or high RT resolution, you will get 60 FPS. This game is made by the creators of Sky Children of the Light, so the gameplay is quite similar. I'm sorry, I have absolutely no idea how to play this game, but it is stuck at 30 FPS. The developer also told me this. It's the same story on the Mac version as well, and yeah. I'm really disappointed with Beyond a Steel Sky here. It doesn't look very good, and the frame rate is stuck at 30, and which isn't terrible for this game because it's really kind of slow paced and you're just talking to people and investigating. Compared to the Mac version, which is a native ARM application and it gets 60 FPS at highest quality, this is kind of embarrassing. It doesn't have any quality options either, it's playing at default quality, and that default quality is really, really low. So I'm really hoping that the developer update this game so that we can possibly change the graphics quality ourselves, add 60 FPS and a higher graphics quality by default. Heaps of you asked to see Mario Kart in this video, and here it is. I have mixed feelings about this game just because it doesn't have the polish of the actual Nintendo version and it has no controller support. I absolutely suck at this game with the touchscreen. I'm actually pretty good on Switch. Anyways, that's besides the point, I guess, because what we're looking at here is performance, and as you can see, it is pretty good. It gets 60 FPS for the most part. And the game, it does look fairly good, but it's not really graphically on par, even near, with the Nintendo version. The game was also fairly recently updated with the landscape mode, so please, Nintendo, add controller support. Like, I don't know why it's not here. This game really needs controller support, please. Alrighty, so I decided not to measure the frame rate with this game just because it has its own in-game FPS counter. I don't know if you can see it, it's at the top right and it's really small, but what it will tell you is that the game gets 60 FPS always. This iPad Pro version actually should have a 120 FPS mode. I mean, technically it does, but it doesn't let me enable it. Whereas if I jumped onto my 2020 iPad Pro, I can enable it there. So by all means, I should be able to switch it on here, but it just won't let me. I have absolutely no idea. I'll be interested to know if you guys in the comments have this issue. Maybe an issue with the 11-inch. If it's on the 12.9-inch, I would love to know because it's really, really bizarre to me. And I'm sorry, I have no idea how to play this game. So I just played the training mode so that I didn't make people in the multiplayer mode get angry because, yeah, I didn't want to upset people. So, sorry if the gameplay is embarrassing. SpongeBob doesn't get enough love, the mobile version, because holy moly, this game is awesome, man. Full controller support, has pretty good graphics, even though it's just a children's game. Would you call it a children's game? I don't know. I mean, I love this game. Adults love this game. Anyways, I'm playing it at epic quality, and it gets 60 FPS for the most part, which is fantastic. Because this game is actually pretty, yeah, as I said, it's kind of graphically advanced, and it has a lot of on-screen effects, and it does dip down there a bit. So if you want 60 FPS, I would advise you to play at high quality, and really the game just looks still as good. The Witness. It is my favorite puzzle adventure game on the App Store, or maybe just in general. For me, it's up there with, you know, legendary games like Myst. I'm kind of disappointed with this game as a whole, not really the performance here, because the developer has capped the frame rate to 30, and besides that, the graphics quality is actually a little bit reduced compared to the PC and console version. It still looks beautiful, don't get me wrong, this is one of the most beautiful games on the App Store, but it actually could look a lot better. So what I'm hoping is that the developer, maybe for this Apple M1 version, add a 60 FPS mode and a higher quality mode, because that would just be, for me, really special, just because I love this game. Alrighty, I apologize, I was unable to track the FPS with this game, but with Northgard, it has a high performance mode where the frame rate will be about 60. The high performance mode is actually enabled by default. The only thing to consider here is that if you are playing in high performance mode, the graphics quality are higher, but it will drain your battery quite a lot faster. So if you're playing this game outside and you don't have your charger near, definitely disable it because it will chew up your battery quite quickly. The translation from Northgard on PC to iPad or even iPhone is really, really good. The touchscreen controls are fantastic. It doesn't have control support, but it doesn't need it. Even on iPhone, the graphical user interface is really, really good. And even in-game, you can scale up the user interface and text, and I don't see many games on the App Store do that, and I'm really proud of this game for putting it in without people asking for it, because a lot of the time I see reviews saying to add this feature in, and this game has it. Sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent here, but I just really like this game. Our last game is LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga, which for me is really special because this is one of my most played games as a child. I used to play it on my iMac G5 practically every day. You don't know how many times I've gone against, what's that guy's name? Darth Maul. I love that level where you fight Darth Maul. Beautiful. The App Store version recently was actually updated with higher resolution and aspect ratio support, and really this game does look pretty good even though it's really, really old. Frame rate is a bit of a mixed bag. It's in the 50s and the game should be aiming for 60 FPS, but it's dipping down a little bit here. The game does have full controller support too. You should definitely play it with one. It's much better than the touchscreen controls, and it feels just like as if you were playing this game on a console. I hope that mouse and keyboard support would be added. This is more special for me just because it would kind of remind me of playing in my iMac G5. Anyway, are you going to buy the new iPad Pro for gaming? What do you think of the performance if you have one, or from this video? Are you impressed or disappointed? Right now, let's be honest, pretty much no games are fully optimized for the Apple M1 chip on this device, apart from Divinity Original Sin 2, which is a great example of what's possible here. I'm hoping that more developers see the potential here and port really big games to this device. I'm going to upload these videos pretty regularly, so definitely subscribe and turn on notifications to stay up to date, and let me know in the comments what other games you would like me to test. Also, please leave a like, as this video was incredibly time consuming, but it would just mean that all my work would be worth it. Anyway, as per usual, my name is Stewie and thank you so much for watching. You guys are awesome.